Ever since I was a kid, I've always loved video games. Playing them was fun, but I was always more interested in how they worked. The first time I actually got to see how they worked was on Khan Academy. Khan Academy has classes on many subjects. One of them is computer programming. 90% of the time, instead of doing my assignments, I would just go to the Browse Projects unit and look at games people have made. What was cool about these is that all the code was just right there. I remember kid me looking through the code of random games for hours, trying to understand them. I remember trying to take the classes on drawing and variables and if statements, and that's like about as far as I got. I could never fully understand how these games worked as a kid, but it was always so interesting. Years later, I realized, hey, if so many people can just make games like this, why can't I? Like, these were kids making these games, right? Past me might have sucked at it, but I think I could do it now. Khan Academy teaches you the code in JavaScript. However, I wanted to do it in Python. Python and JavaScript are completely different languages, but I've heard Python is easier to pick up, so that's the one I ended up going with. My first attempt at this didn't go too well. Here it is. You're this square, and you're in a maze. I didn't know how to put a game on a screen, so it's all in this console. One thing I knew about Python was this print command, which lets you put any text you want down there. I was just working with what I had. You move by entering a direction into the console, and yeah, it has to make a new maze each time you want to move. Your goal is to collect these circles, but you can't go through any other squares. Once you collect 10, you win. Anyway, this game has a lot of problems. Like walking off the screen just explodes, except for some times where you just disappear, and other times you just wrap around to the other side. And usually the maze just kinda sucks. But I mean, for someone who doesn't know Python, this doesn't seem too bad, right? Yeah, like 50% of this was just ChatGPT. I had pretty much no idea what I was doing. It was a lot of fun to make though. Just trying to get everything to work. Here's what Past Me eventually came up with. This game may look like a grid, but that's not how the code sees it. To make the maze, this line generates 100 random numbers, either a 0, a 1, or a 2. So every maze is just one long line of 0s, 1s, and 2s. It doesn't really look like a maze right now, so to fix that, we need to go down here. This part goes through each number, and if it's a 0, it types a box. If it's a 1 or a 2, it types a dot. So there's a 1/3 chance of each tile being a box. This goes on until every 10th tile, where it places a -n or a line break, which basically means it'll move to the next line and keep typing. To make a player, the game looks at what tile number the player's on, let's say tile 38, and places a square instead of a dot. To go left to right, just add 1 to the tile number it's on, so now it's on tile 39. Moving it up or down is slightly harder. If you want to go down, instead of adding 1 to the player's tile number, you have to add 10, because the tile 10 away from it is actually the tile below it. Now you can move in all 4 directions. It works pretty well, but it's not perfect. When you go off the side of the screen, you do wrap around, but you go down 1 tile as well, because you just went through the line break. These 2 tiles are actually right next to each other, so this wasn't the best way of coding it, but it was the simplest way I could think of. And I remember it being pretty fun to figure out. I just sucked at actually trying to code it. I did learn a little bit of Python from making this game, but again, I didn't even make most of it. Like, I definitely didn't write that. Anyway, for this next game, I wanted everything on its own screen. Unlike last time though, I actually did some research on how to get that to work. To do it, I used Pygame. Pygame lets you create a window and then you can put whatever you want on it, as long as you know how to code it. Alright, first things first, let's try to put a square on the screen. Perfect. Don't worry, I'd very rarely just straight up copy and paste code from ChatGPT. I mainly learned just by watching YouTube tutorials and experimenting on my own. ChatGPT would help when I had questions, which I would have a lot of. Okay, anyway, making this square move was a challenge. I didn't use chat for it though. To make Pygame draw a square, you have to use this square function, which takes 4 inputs, the x position, y position, width, and height, and with those, draws a square on the screen. The ones we care about are the x and y positions. We want to be able to change these whenever we want, so we can move the square. To do that, the x and y positions need to be variables, which we're going to see a lot of in this game. By default, this x position is 100, but each frame it'll add 1 to that number. And changing this x here will change it over here as well. Now it keeps redrawing the square slightly to the right, and that makes it look like it's moving. I only want it to move when I press the right arrow key though. This is something I don't think I could have figured out on my own. We can do the same but subtract 1 when we press left, and now we can go in both directions. I want this game to be a platformer, so let's make this square fall. And it needs to fall faster and faster the longer it's falling. This actually took a while, but here's what eventually worked. This square has a y velocity. In each frame, the square's y velocity is added to its y position, so it moves that amount of pixels each frame. Then each frame, it also adds 1 to that y velocity. And because the y velocity keeps getting bigger and bigger, a bigger and bigger number will keep getting added to the y coordinate, so it should look like it's falling faster and faster. Wow, that worked way better than I thought it would. Does just keep falling forever though. We need something for it to land on. This is actually pretty easy. The screen is 500 pixels tall, so if the Y coordinate ever gets above 500, we just need to put the square back to 500. So now it'll never go under the screen. Oh, what happened? Well, the screen is 500 pixels tall, but the player's Y coordinate is actually this point. So when it falls to the bottom, you just barely can't see it. So I guess instead of falling 500, wait until you fall 400 pixels, because you're 100 tall. The floor is technically right here, but it looks perfect. Anyway, now we need to get this player to jump. So if you press up, it'll make your Y velocity 5, so you should go up until gravity pulls you back down. That's not right. The problem is when you're in the air, you can still jump. And as long as you keep holding the jump button, your Y velocity just keeps going up. We need another variable that tracks when you're on the ground. So anytime this floor pushes you up, it'll also make this grounded variable become true. Otherwise, it's false. And you can only jump when grounded is true. Nice, this jump sucks though. Let's just make this jump bigger. Or, I guess technically smaller. Okay, I gotta talk about something annoying that I kept running into. When I look at this screen, I like to imagine it like a graph, where this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, and this is 0, 0. But actually, 0, 0 is over here. And even weirder, this way is the positive direction. So unlike a normal graph, if you increase the y value of something, you actually go down instead of up. I don't know, I think it's annoying, but this is just how Pygame works, I guess. Anyway, let's make a box. I want it so no matter what side you enter it from, it'll push you out. This game is gonna have a lot of them, so this box is gonna need to be a function. Functions basically let you write code once, and then you can call that function whenever you want to run it, so you don't have to keep writing the same code over and over again. This might look a little complicated, but it just does the same thing as the ground, only sideways. If you're to the left of this line, it'll push you back to its edge. Except this time, it only works if you're also in between these two lines. So when you're in this box, it'll push you back to the right. Right now, this hitbox extends out forever. I could change it to make sure you're to the right of some other line, but I kind of worry that if I do this for all 4 sides of this box, their hitboxes will overlap in each corner. So if the player jumps right here, which hitbox will push the player? I don't want to have to worry about that. Instead, I have a different idea. I'm going to track where you were every previous frame. And if on the last frame you were in front of this line, but now you're behind it, that's when it'll move you. So basically, instead of pushing you out when you're anywhere in this area, it'll only push you out when you just cross this line. Now we just do this on each side, and we got a box. And because it's a function, we can put as many as we want anywhere. You might notice a problem though. I did make you look like a square, but really, you're just this dot. If I remove the square, you can probably see it better. It's pretty simple to get a hitbox like this to know if it's intersecting with one point, but how do you get it to know when it's intersecting another box? I actually wasn't able to figure this one out. ChatGPT spoiled it. Okay, so before, both sideways walls were checking if this side of the player was past it. But if both hitboxes were actually squares, this left wall should never be able to touch this other left wall. Like, how could they? If we try, they should get blocked by every other part of the square. In fact, the only other wall this wall can touch is this right one, no others. So for this wall, instead of checking the left wall, like before, it needs to check the right wall. And this is how all 4 walls are. There's only one wall each can touch, so that's the one it needs to check. This kind of solution is super easy, but it only works with rectangles aligned with the coordinate plane. Like, if these things were angles, or if we added a circle, this wouldn't work at all. That's probably why a lot of games are just a bunch of perfectly aligned boxes. Anyway, now the player can finally be a square. I think I eventually just asked ChatGPT, what are some things about Python that I probably don't know about yet and would help with making this game? And a lot of things it told me were just stuff that could help me clean up my code, like putting the origin of each box in the center. But there was one thing that made making this game way easier. Classes. Before I started learning Python, I knew some things, like I knew how to use variables and if statements, and I at least knew that functions and lists existed, but I had never heard of classes. Basically, classes let you create objects. Let's say we have this square class. We can give it a bunch of attributes like a position, a width and height, a color. We can also give it some functions of its own, so when you want to draw it, you want to push things out of it. Now we basically created a blueprint for this square, so we can give one a name and call an instance of it. And now we can create as many of these square objects as we want, all with those same properties. This on its own seems kind of similar to the square function we made before, but this is where classes become really helpful. The player is also a square, with many of the same attributes, like a position, a width and height, color, but the player can move. It needs speed and grounded attributes. It's affected by gravity, and it also needs a different function for when we want to move it. We could make a whole new class just for the player, but because they're so similar to the square class from before, we can just make a child class from this main square class. Now, with barely any more code, it has everything the square class had, and we can just add everything else it needs without affecting the original class. To use a function from an object, we put the name of the object, and then the function we want to run. For this function, one of the inputs is which object it'll be pushing. We need to make sure no objects get past this wall, so it has to run for each object. So every wall will check every moving object using its position to make sure it's not colliding. They don't need to check other statics though, since they can't move and they'll never collide. I'm not sure this is the best way of coding collision, since like every object's gonna have to check every other object, and adding more and more objects is gonna slow the game down more and more, but whatever. I don't think we'll have enough objects to have to worry about that. I feel like I've been talking about classes for a while. Well, we're pretty much done. I don't think I fully understand them, but they were still super useful for this game. Anyway, thanks to classes, now we have fully working boxes, which we can create falling objects and a player from. And it only took, like, a month to do. Yeah, it took way longer than I'm showing in this video. Like, I probably wasted about 2 weeks trying to get these boxes to rotate. Chat helped a lot with this, like, still not sure how that works. But eventually I decided, you know what, this game doesn't need slopes anyway. They're not worth the trouble. Anyway, after all that, we can finally start actually making the game. Okay, so, what is this game gonna be? I actually haven't thought about it all too much. I think this game should have different levels, but because I'm not sure if anyone but me is going to play this game, I want these levels to be completely random. Like, I'm not going to have any fun if I already know everything. So your objective is to get some randomly placed goal, and also maybe the player could feel a little bit better to control. Alright, let's just start adding stuff. I first added a wall jump, and this works pretty much the same as how normal jumping works. Just, instead of walls pointing up, turning an object's grounded attribute to true, walls facing out will turn its left or right walled attribute to true. And when it's true, you can jump. I also added a cool slide move that you go faster while doing, and if you jump during it, you can preserve your momentum and jump really far. And while in the air, you can also do a dive, which lets you stay in the air a little longer. All of these made the player actually kind of fun to move, which is a pretty good sign that this game might actually be good. There's also this goal that when you enter, everything disappears and a new level spawns in. Right now it's always just this level though. It took a while to figure out how random levels were going to work. The plan is to make many smaller level chunks and just place them randomly around, making sure they never overlap. I also made a class for collecting these circles, so when you get to the goal, you'll collect it. And collecting the goal would end the level, but I can also make it do whatever I want. Like now I have many other circles, and the goal doesn't activate until you've collected them all. But wait, I said earlier while getting the collision to work, that this rectangle can only collide with other rectangles. So how does this work? Well, I'm not actually using the same type of collision for this circle. Instead, the circle is just checking the distance between it and the other object. So basically, the circle just sees the player as another circle, and when those two circles overlap, then it will know it's been collected. So overlapping the corner of the square still doesn't actually work. It's a little weird, but whatever, it was easier to code. Okay, collecting these circles gives me a new idea. What if there were some power-ups you could collect that give you different abilities and could be placed randomly around the level? That'll also help give these levels even more variety. Also, more abilities might increase the chances of each level being, possible. Okay, so here's one. When you collect it, you can slow down the frame rate. This makes jumps much easier to make since you got more time to think. It was also really easy to add. Like, I already have code to slow down the frame rate for when I need to test stuff. Also, here's one that changes your gravity so you fall slower. Again, this was really easy. It just changes this one variable. Here's one that actually took some thinking. I remember a while ago there was a glitch that you could get stuck on the corner and get an extra jump from it. What if that was an ability? That glitch worked because the top of each block was checking these 4 points of the player to see if they went past. But the top of each block didn't really need to check the top of the player since they're not supposed to touch. And it actually did take a bit of coding to get working. The best ability so far is probably this double jump, and the little timer visual on top was probably harder to code than the actual ability. Okay, one more power for now. This dash move. So with this ability, instead of doing a dive, you can dash. And while coding it, for some reason it kept just dashing through walls. Eventually though, I decided, you know what, this actually just makes it way cooler. So now it's just part of the ability. I think it's finally time I can remove this dot from each square. It was used for me to see where its true position was, but it was never meant to look good. I think we're far enough in that we don't need to see it anymore. Same thing with these black backgrounds behind each level chunk. Now the game looks, well, actually now it looks kind of empty. To change that, I added a small outline behind each block, so now it's a little more interesting to look at. I didn't want every block to look the exact same, so I also made each's color slightly randomized. And the player has a little glow around it, so it pops out a bit more. I also gave the circles an outline, which just makes them look way better. Now the game doesn't actually look that bad. The final thing this game needs is an end. Like right now, it just kind of goes on forever, and beating a level just spawns a new random one. We need something to work towards. So now, the game will create 5 levels and put them in a list. Dying will spawn a random level from that list, and beating one will remove it from that list. And you only get those levels until you beat all 5 of them. Once they're all gone, it'll spawn 5 more, but now each level will have more level chunks, more power-ups, and more white circles to collect. So it'll keep getting harder and harder until eventually, once you beat enough levels, you're brought to this screen, which tells you you've won. And with that, I feel like the game is pretty much done. I think it turned out pretty well. I mean, it's not the best game out there. There's definitely a ton of issues with it, like there's still a chance the level just isn't possible. And there's so many glitches. If I slow the game down, I can keep diving against a wall and slowly go up it. But I'm not fixing that, because trying this without slowing the game, it's clear there's no way anyone could actually do it. Using some power-ups though, you could totally abuse it. Another one, diving against a wall bounces you away from it. That part's normal, but this bounce is actually faster than doing a slide. So the fastest way to move is to dive into a wall and quickly turn around using its momentum. Didn't fix that, because it's actually really fun to do. If you dive into the floor and dive again right when you touch it, you'll just clip through the ground. I don't understand how that works, and it's kinda hard to pull off anyway, so not fixing it. These boxes are also super glitchy. They took forever to get working, but there's a reason I didn't go over them too much in this video, and it's because they suck to make. I still don't think they worked as well as I wanted them to, but they're not used too much in this game anyway. Looking at some of the older code in this game with all the knowledge I've gained kinda hurts sometimes. Like, remember when I wanted these boxes to rotate? These squares still have that 5th input for angle, which I always just keep at 0. Not sure why it's still there. If I did change it, I don't think anything would even— oh. Why did I keep that in? Look at all this code to get a rectangle to rotate. This runs anytime I want to draw something. Nothing even rotates in this game, so all that needs to be there is this. I still don't know how this works really. You can tell ChatGPT did it. ChatGPT was a big help at the start, but eventually this game got big enough where not even chat could help me fix my problems. I think I'm at the point now where I could remake this game all on my own. So even if the game isn't perfect, which it isn't, I've definitely accomplished what I wanted to do with this game. I obviously don't know everything, like apparently I can put sprites and sound in this game, and I also just put everything in one long file, which isn't a good idea for a game this size, but I'm still way better than I was when I started. And it was a lot of fun, pretty much the whole time. If you want to play it, there's a link in the description to the game. At least for me on Firefox though, it just doesn't run. Just goes to show how badly coded this game was. Whatever, I think it'd be more fun just to download PyCharm and paste the code into there so you can dig through it and change whatever you don't like. Anyway, thanks for watching.